Alright, today's recipe is going to be this Indian and lamb coconut curry sauce. If you can get a good view on the recipe there, instructions there, pause the video if you really want to look it up. But before we begin on that, I wanted to do a quick little aside on knives. I've assembled here probably the only sets of knives you really need. You have your general purpose chef's knife, which you use for just about everything because it can be used for just about everything. Almost all of your slicing should be done with it. Almost all of like your carving and all of this and that. Anything you would use a knife for, just all you really need is a chef's knife. But if you need to do like fine detailed stuff like coring fruit and all that and that sort of thing, getting like the eyes out of potatoes, bad spots off and stuff, you want a good paring knife, just a small short blade like that, and that's good for just all of your fine detail work. Additionally, a peeler, because a lot of fruits and vegetables are better prepared peeled. So like if you're making like an apple dish, you'd probably peel your apples, peel your potatoes obviously, and also serves as a good way to get a bit of rind for zesting a citrus fruit, which you would then take your chef's knife on to cut up nice and small and use as a very good zest. Your cleaver is then used for heavier cutting, mainly if you're trying to cut through bones or something like that. Don't really use it for much else besides that. And for coconuts, where you take the heavy blunt end and just give it a good smack to open them. And yes, I did. That's the only use of a cleaver we saw in my entire cooking class when Chef decided to show it off and hold the coconut in one hand and smack it with the cleaver in the other. That was an interesting night. It's also our fruit night. So he did pineapple, where he did this really cool trick, chef knife only, cutting the pineapple into quarters, getting the pineapple off the rind there, and then slicing the pineapple into sections, and then you just move each section back in and out, and you have a very nice presented sliced pineapple. Last knife I'd say you'd really need is a bread knife for cutting breads. It's the only serrated knife you would use in food preparation. Every other knife you see has the straight edge as compared to the serrated edge. It's because this straighter edge gives a better, more even cut. It doesn't really tear up the food, doesn't really ruin the food that you're trying to prepare. Also have steel here, which is used for honing the edges. You do that a lot more often than sharpening, just because you're not really losing too much sharpness. You're just wanting to put the edge back on straight and true instead of adding the sharpness more often. So these are the sets of knives that I say you should be the only ones you need. These are the only ones I've saw in my entire cooking class. These are the only ones that the trained chef that teaches the class recommends. So these are what you want to use. And while I'm mentioning knives, I should also mention cutting surfaces. The recommended cutting surface, most chefs say, is a good wood or heavy plastic cutting board. This isn't that heavy plastic. I don't think we have a good example of that. on hand, but just one that is a nice wood or heavy plastic is what they say. Make sure it's one big enough for what you're cutting, and also you want to switch it out every time you're switching between cutting meats and non-meats, because you get cross-contamination that way. Get yourself sick if you get meat juices into a vegetable dish that doesn't necessarily get cooked the same way or same temperature as a meat dish. And additional notes on surfaces: what you really don't want are metal or, like this, ceramic, because those are horrible for your knife's blade. Bit of a science lesson to go with that is the metal and ceramic are very similar in that they are essentially crystals. A metal blade, like this one being a stainless steel, is a very big iron crystal with carbon and other elemental impurities in it. A ceramic is whatever ceramic material crystal it is, usually a bunch of earths, which are generally in all different metals in conglomeration. Except for like silicon carbon and oxygen, you're very rarely not encountering metals in everyday life. So another thing about like metals and ceramics is that they have like these high melting temperatures, high resistances, and the like. So while ceramic is very good at resisting, some ceramics can resist up to 3,000-4,000 degrees Celsius. Kitchen ceramic here being very good for, say, kitchen level temperatures. So even up into a couple hundred or so Celsius or more. So that's very good for these tiles. But them being a crystal, like our knives here, they don't go together very well. And ask any samurai, any swordsman, what happens when you do a metal on metal? You ruin the cutting edge that you're hitting with, and that ruins the blade of your knife really quickly. Additionally, because ceramics are also very close to glass, they're prone to breaking easy, which is why you would want a metal knife and not a ceramic knife, because you drop your metal knife, you can just straighten it out, sharpen it, run it over the steel again, and it's good. As you drop your ceramic knife, you're spending another couple $100 buying a new ceramic knife. Likewise, you hit your ceramic knife against or your metal knife against the ceramic enough, it'll cause the ceramic to break and then get into your food, and you don't want that, especially if it doesn't break and not get into your food, in which case stuff gets inside there and bacteria growing in a crack that you're putting food on top of again and again and again, that is going to contaminate your food really quickly. So there's a lot of reasons why you do not ever cut on a ceramic surface, why you want a good wood or plastic cutting board. And in this state, since to even take a cooking class, you have to be ServSafe certified. The state requires you to use a plastic cutting board for any professional cooking. There hasn't really been enough proof, according to most chefs, that wood is bad, but to comply, they use plastic in a professional setting, but wood's just as fine for that that purpose as well. I also have to do note on both plastic and wood. Hit it hard enough with your knife, it's going to break off, and you're going to get some hard chunks in your food as well. That's also why I went over that slicing technique, where what you're really doing is gently letting gravity, as you're working your cut through the item, and you can do your work that way. You don't end up with a piece of the cutting board, or worse, if you're slamming it down and actually making that sort of a sound. That's horrible for your knife because you're hurting the edge of it. And that's really the first time in about a year, if not ever, that this knife has ever been forced down like that. So if you're just slicing, you get a more of a cutting sound. So just a bit of cutting board safety there. Bonus step for everyone out there. Okay, now getting into the actual recipe part of it. We have to marinate our lamb, which is right here, ready to be cut up, and some spices for an hour to more than an hour to half a day is what this is going to end up as. Our spices are listed here in very tablespoon size amounts, but we only need half of it for the marinade. So preparing our half recipe: turmeric, pepper, salt, garam masala, cayenne, cumin, and some coriander, which just ground in a small coffee grinder, which is very good for grinding spices. Now I'm gonna mix them together and then have to slice the meat. Meat's going to be sliced into about those 3 centimeter cubes I mentioned in a previous video, so about that big. That's a very good stewing size, because then they can cook down a little bit but not give off too much flavor in the process, or lose too much flavor in the process. And I'm going to mix them together in a big enough bowl to handle all that, and then find something to put them in overnight. And so probably see you again when I get to the actual rest of the cooking phase of it. Alright, almost getting ready to start doing the final cooking. So what's the next step between doing the marinade and cooking? Obviously gathering the rest of the ingredients, because you don't want to get lost or have to scramble to find something before you're on the spot and delivering a late product. So I got the spices, going to remix the second half of the spice mix. Got some tomatoes, going to peel them and chop them, and obviously seed them, because you don't want the seeds in almost any product using tomatoes you use, because they add a lot of moisture and acidity, and you really don't want that, especially in stuff like salads. And but you do want that in like tomato sauces, so there you go. And have an onion that going to dice up as well. We got garlic and ginger, which we're going to juice the ginger and then puree the mixture of those two for the sauce, which will include the tomatoes and onions. But anyone who works on the making a stove knows you add the onion first, then you add the fun stuff and go from there. But so I'm going to get started on doing a lot of this stuff. Probably going to do most of it off camera, because it's boring stuff, and you'll probably figure out how to do it all on your own as well. I mean, Google exists for a reason. To help peel the onions, going to do them, going to boil them a little bit. What you'd want to do is like remove the stems, and on the bottom make a little hex mark, and and then put them in some near boiling water, and once the skin starts peeling back is when you take them out and you can peel them. And after that is you just cut them open and seed them as normal. Here's a bit what I was saying about why you would want to keep a paring knife around, because you have a bit of a discoloration on one of the cloves of garlic. This is not going to easily get it out, but you can quickly and easily get it out with the tip with the paring knife. Same using the paring knife to get the stems out of tomatoes and the like. Okay, we're at our final stage right before we're putting everything in to get cooked. We got our diced tomato, diced onion, coconut milk, which will be for the curry sauce, our garlic frappe that will be good for which will be part of our sauce. It's this plus this equals our base sauce. Oh, and it's also plus this, the seasonings. My mom mixes those up for us, so that's while I was working on the other things, so that's nice. Then there's our marinated meat, which is looking and smelling very fragrant. The dish we're using, dish we're using is nice heavy metal bowl. As with stewing and braising, you put a bit of the vegetable oil in the bottom. Brown up the meat, sear them up, set that aside, make your sauce, add all of the liquid, which in this case is our coconut milk, and then cook for a while. So that's how that's going to go. And probably give you an update during the process at some point. Just finishing up browning the meat. As you can see, we have a whole bunch of it. Next step, in about 30 seconds or so, will be sauteing the onion for the sauce, which you put straight into into the pot. It's good for keeping the flavor, because the oil in the pot has already got a lot of the flavor from the meat already, and then that translates into the sauce. So saute those up until they're nice and caramelized, and then after that is adding the ginger and garlic smoothie. Then we're boiling that down up to sec levels, which is about, which is like really dry, barely anything left, mostly just like juices coating the onions and other aromatics. Once that's boiled down, that's when we finally add the tomatoes and the coconut milk and spices. Alright, the onions have cooked down to about the right level. That's about almost at sec, so we're getting that down. Next step will be adding the spice, and a few seconds later adding the tomatoes, followed by slowly incorporating the coconut milk, And once all that's added in, we put the meat in and simmer for about 30 minutes. And there we go. The lamb and coconut milk have been added. Just going to be simmering for the next about 30 minutes. And that's all good. We got rice cooking already too, so everything's coming together nicely. And here's the final product. Very fork tender. Rice to serve it over. Tried a bit of the curry already. Very good. Very spicy aftertaste. So turned out really well. If you saw the recipes, you can on the earlier parts of the video, pull it off of there, and you saw how we prepared it as is. So go for it yourself.